Hi everyone, I'm Daniel and welcome to Just One Truth. In this video, I'm going to move into part 2 of Did Jesus Teach What the Buddha Taught? Decoding the Sermon on the Plain. In this video, I am using a set of tools, a process in which to apply to each one of Jesus's lines, each one of his verses, and see if using this process reveals something inside of the verse. You'll see, if you haven't seen before, how that works as we move along. This is part 2. If you are just getting here the first time, jump back to part 1. That'll catch you up on what we're doing. Very quickly, I'll just refresh right here and tell everyone that we're taking a look at the verse and we are making it a spiritual verse about us. We're turning it in upon ourselves. I'll talk about that in just a little bit more. The other thing that we're doing is that we're making ourselves metaphoric representations of the verse. By that I mean, if somebody were to tell you, you need to weed your garden, that might mean to you in plain language, you have to go home and pull the weeds out of your garden. Or it might mean metaphorically to you that you have to take care of the issues in your head that have got you frazzled. That's what I mean by making yourself a metaphoric part of the verse. It's about us. That's where we turn it in upon ourselves. The next part is where I speculate that when they're talking about healing the soul, looking inward, looking in upon yourself, it was a very magical, mystical place to them. The soul allowed us to function when we weren't thinking about it. It's what carried us through life as we were busy doing one thing while we were functioning and doing things in the background. But it also carried all of our pain and our hurt and our shame, and we had to heal that soul. And I speculated at some point, boy, I don't know how to heal a soul, but I know how to heal my experiences. I know how to put to rest my past. And if that's what they're talking about, let's, for the purpose of this, for the purpose of decoding, let's just make the soul the subconscious mind. And that doesn't mean that the subconscious mind is the soul. That means trying to understand what they're talking about. Let's just apply it there and see what happens. It's just a theory. And it keeps things away from a supernatural, way out there belief system that suddenly becomes something you can't get a hold of. What I want to do is make sure that it's something we can all grasp, we can look at, we can apply it to ourselves. It's something that we can do for ourselves. It becomes a very personal process if we follow his teachings. We'll get into that more. Now back to this point where I said this turning point. What is this turning point, and does it even make sense? Let's look at a couple of things here where I believe in just a couple of examples of world teachings where an example is shown where we're supposed to do this, but this is metaphor. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the road is easy that leads to destruction, and there are many who take it. For the gate is narrow and the road is hard that leads to life, and there are few who find it. What is this narrow gate? How about something from the 13th century poet, the Persian Hindu poet Rumi? I have lived on the lip of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens. I've been knocking from the inside. What is Rumi's door? And I'm pretty sure if we thought about it, we could think of most of the religions or spiritual teachings that we have exposed ourselves to have some kind of a entryway, doorway, some way to pass from the outer world to the inner world to the spiritual world. And this is a physical outer thing, but it's also a spiritual inner thing. The outer world is a reflection of the inner world in this case. It's kind of amazing to see this if you think about it this way. Okay, so we turn in it inward. And if you start going on a spiritual search, you know that that's the first step, really, is that awakening, that point where you realize, oh my gosh, my life is unfolding because of me, not because of the world. That's like point number 1, where you realize I have to turn inward. I have to look at myself. That's entering. That's going through the gateway. If we use that in all of the different religions, if we just kind of share that idea, it looks like they go to the same places. You know, in the Bible, there's this idea actually in Jesus's world of this curtain that exists between the holy and the holy of holies. And the idea is to rent so that the two are no longer separated. Jesus also says, make the two into one, enter like a child. All these things that are references to what is he talking about? It's just getting back to that Buddha idea of letting everything go. All of the things you picked up in life, all of your judgments, your hates, your pain, your shame, all of the things that have made you, Rumi's pounding, knocking on the lip of insanity. What is it? Yeah, turn inward. So the gateway then, to me, is the door kind of between the conscious and the subconscious. That kind of accesses your awareness, your capacity to reason, your capacity to look at things, to judge things, to process things. And it goes into the realm of here are memories, here are experience, here are things that act out. It becomes your subconscious mind. And often we put up doorways, gates. We hide parts of who and what we are. And whether that is all it or not, I don't know. But that's this idea of looking inward, the doorway, the gate, getting into in the temple, which is two parts, getting into the outer part first, which is for the masses, and then finding a way to open it up so that you can get into the Holy of Holies. So in this case, in this interpretation, what I'm suggesting is that the doorway that we enter to go into the holy place in all of our cultural religions, physically, into our temples, into our synagogues, into anywhere that we go into that is a secret or a holy place, rather, that if we make that a metaphoric representation of ourselves and say, oh, let's turn it inward, what is that doorway that we enter? Yeah, and that's kind of how it comes down to it, doesn't it? It looks like this is the holy place if we do it that way. And that's how I'm kind of looking at this. That's how Buddhism and Taoism, when you break the things down and start analyzing them and looking at them and applying them to changing your life, this is how I do that as well. And they all show the same thing as far as I'm concerned. All of this stuff I'm doing is theoretical. I've not heard it before. Not exactly like this. Maybe bits and pieces of it, like there's vestiges of it out there and you get little bits. So this is theoretical. I'm just throwing it out there. But I do know that if you do interpret it this way and then apply it this way, that it changes your life in a certain way that is like they described. So to me, the theory seems like it's pretty plausible. But again, it's personal and experiential. Nobody's going to know if this is, if going inward and cleaning house is the accurate thing to do or the right thing to do, unless you decide for yourself it makes sense. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it. And you do it successfully and it makes a difference in your life. That's the only way you're going to know whether or not it's true. It's an experiential process and you have to believe in it to begin with. And if you felt like it, you could take a look at my earlier videos where I kind of talk about my earlier life, about coming from abuse, of cutting my brother out of a tree as a 9-year-old after I found him where he'd hung himself in the woods, and going on for more abuse and molestation and having a really difficult time in life. I struggled a lot and I had to get some things straight. And that's why I've outlined that story so detailed in my first 5 or 6 videos, is I really want to show to people who have that kind of despair that I found this way out. And you know what, though? No one could take that trip for me. No one can take it for you. People that say they're going to lead you, people can point. You got to go yourself. If you're in a group, you're in the outside. When you rent that curtain, when you open that gate, when you learn how to make the two into one, which is, according to Jesus, how you enter through that gate, when you go from where The many are called, to the few are chosen. Suddenly, you're walking alone. Because truth be told, on this spiritual trip, it's individual and it exists in the mind of the individual taking that trip. If you take the inner trip, it is yours and yours alone. But that's okay. That's your journey. Let us just review very quickly what we did in the last part. And we actually went through and started out with blessings and woes. We went through verse 20 through 26. And without going back into it again, basically what we came up with in using this process was the idea, blessed are you who are poor, poor in spirit, empty in spirit, devoid of all of these things, similar to enter into the kingdom of heaven within as a child before you have learned all of the things, the judgments, the convictions, the things that you have about people and things in the world that you've never even seen. They're just things people told you because they judge it that way, and that became a part of you. That's not being poor in spirit. Being poor in spirit means being devoid of those things. So the first thing we want to do is clear ourselves out of all of our convictions. If we look at a lot of stories about Jesus or from Jesus, we get the same kind of theme. Let's take a look at another one real quick. The story about Jesus going into the temple and flipping over the tables and throwing out the money changers and the people selling doves and things like that. You know, if we use this process to unlock all of Jesus' teachings and kind of use the same process on all of them, making them about ourselves and about our subconscious, we will see that Jesus teaches very few things. He's putting the same lessons in different words and different styles for different people. In this case, this is not a Jesus teaching, though. This is a story about Jesus. So what could it mean? He's going in on presumably the biggest, if not one of the biggest holidays that the Jews have. This is Passover. People from everywhere in all the land are traveling days. What does it take to walk on foot to go to the temple to celebrate? And then your celebration is to give glory to God, among other things. You're going to pray, you're going to go to the temple, and you're going to offer up burnt offerings. What are you going to bring? You're going to travel across the lands carrying goats and doves and things like that. Do you even have those? You're going to bring your money from your region. You're going to come there. You're going to exchange that money in the temple to go buy doves to give to the priests, the Pharisees, whoever, who are going to prepare it and go sacrifice it on your behalf for God. That's what's going on here. Did Jesus go in there and just say, all of you Jews and your ideas are trash? You know, people want to interpret that, and they will, and they'll look at it outwardly and say, Jesus is cleaning the temple of the bad things. In the meantime, it's like, well, wait a minute. Is Jesus preserving the temple to sacrifice animals to God? You know, you look at it and go, boy, it takes a lot of work to twist answers to make that make sense. However, if metaphorically the temple is up here and all of those things he's throwing out represents those things in life, you know, the money changers, the things that are kind of the world and not of the spirit, I would say that the story can take on some symbolism for me, letting me know that I have to clean out my temple. And if I don't read it that way, then all I can do is say, oh yeah, Jesus did that once, and there's nothing I can do with the story. If I interpret it, oh, it helps me understand something that goes along with everything else he continues to teach. Clean out the inside. Okay, as we continue to read on through those very cryptic 2,000-year-old verses and apply these tools, these keys, techniques to unlock them, what we ended up with was the idea that you need to empty yourself out. If you're looking for answers and you're intensely looking for them, you will find these answers. The hunger that is going to fill you is not physical hunger, it's spiritual hunger. You feed your soul with knowledge and answers and satisfaction. That's what you're looking for. That's what you will get if you are sincerely on that path. Weep now, for you will laugh. Those things inside of you that have hurt you, that you don't weep over, they will continue to live there and hurt. When you weep over them when you have given them time to heal. And sometimes that's difficult. What is this? Literally everything from letting somebody off the hook that you mistakenly accused of something to letting off the person that molested you multiple times or raped you. Ooh, that's tough. This is not an easy path. But these are the things that we hold inside, and we find ways of changing the way that we hold them inside of us, because that's what changes our life then. But if you don't weep, when we hide those things inside of us, what we know from experience, people that are on board here with this so far, you know that it keeps acting out, and you realize at some point, oh my God, I've got to do something. I got to do something different. I can't hide it away anymore. And when that happens, yeah, that's a scary moment, but that's what you got to do. You have to do that weep. Then you will laugh, you'll heal, you'll get over it. You'll be like, oh, okay, I'm good. Blessed are you when people hate you and when they exclude you, revile you, defame you, do things like that. When you go on this path, you're going to see it in the comment sections. People that are like, oh, there's a few people that like it. There's going to be people that tell you, you are doing everything wrong. You don't understand it right. You don't have faith. I have, in trying to have this discussion with people before, been told that I fit into the category of like a false prophet and things like that. And at some point you're like, oh my gosh, I mean, you're not on the side of the religious people. But at the same time, as you start going through this, you realize, okay, this is not, at this stage, it's not a religious process. It's a very personal, let's look at it for what it really is. It's a very psychological process. It's a very personal psychological process that you have decided you are going to impose this path upon yourself, is what this is. It is not a religious path. So the religious people are not going to like what you've done with it. And the people who are hurt but aren't religious, but are seeing you say, hey, guess what? I found it's better off for me to admit to my pain and my shame and to come to terms with it. And once I do, I'm okay with it. I can even talk about it freely. And people around you that aren't religious but have been in that position, they're going to, that's going to set them off. Yeah, you're kind of in everybody's crosshairs. You know? Shh. Find your friends. Go on a secret path. Every master ascended. What does that mean in some way, shape, or form? They left society. Did they do that literally? Did they leave the planet? Or did they leave the influence of humanity? You're also going to just cease to fit where you are. We are certain people in life, and as we grow, as we develop, as we continue to become something new, we kind of move on from place to place. It actually goes on to tell you to rejoice when you see that happening. If you're changing in your life to the point that things around you are starting to fall apart and the group is not your group anymore, you're on course. With that fun stuff done, let's get right into the next section, which is going to start with verse number 27. And this is in the area that says, love your enemies. Verse number 27 says, but I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. There's actually 2 points in here. First of all, that first little line, but I say to you that listen. We see this a few times from Jesus, don't we? Something like, for you with ears to hear, you better listen. Why does Jesus do this? Out of all of the masters from antiquity, he's the only one that ever says, hey, pay attention. I think that in his day and age, he's teaching things and he's sending it out to people and he's trying to maybe let people know something is contained inside of here. You know, if you were telling somebody that, we'll use the example that I've been using of anchoring your boat. If it's a spiritual teaching and you're referencing somebody's holding on to something that they need to let go of. That's what this is about. But you don't tell them that directly. You're putting it in a mystical way. And so you tell them, you need to cast off. And that's it. And they would look at that and go, I don't get it. We're not talking boats here. I'm not in the freaking water. They don't understand the metaphor. But if you say, hey, pay attention, secrets follow, cast off. I think that's all Jesus is doing there. It doesn't mean anything else, does it? Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Okay, well, presumably, if we do this in the physical world, if you love your enemies, then they should love you back, right? Maybe not right away. Maybe it'll take a while. Maybe it'll take a few generations of their family killing your family before somebody finally along the way says, you know what, they're not that mean people after all. We've been killing them and they don't do anything back. But we know from looking at the world and the media that it doesn't really work that way, that there are people out there that will oppress other people, take their resources, take their land, take their belief system, take their culture, take everything from them. And you lose yourself, you lose your identity, you lose who and what you are. At what point in time do you look at that and say, oh, you're supposed to love those people? You're going to die and they will have your stuff. Do you love that? Okay, and obviously that's a worst case scenario. By and large, I think when you are nice and polite and kind to people, they will reciprocate. So in order for most of us to reconcile a verse like that, looking at our life with it, is that we have to start putting our own caveats and addendums to it based on what our own personal perceptions and feelings in life is like. And I honestly don't believe that any masterful teacher intended that kind of flexibility to be in there. So then, the magic begins as we go in the doorway and turn it inward, and the enemies are the things that we have inside of us. We're getting the idea that the outer world is a reflection of our inner world, and that in order to change what is out here, the only way to do that is to change the motivating factors for it. So we go inside and we realize the enemies are in us. And the enemies are mental perceptions. And when you recognize that and you recognize what motivated them, what got them there, how they began, how the seed was planted, metaphor, right? What happened to you at what point in time that made you hurt? Boom, that's the seed. Then it sits there and you hurt, you stew. Time goes on, things happen, it's growing inside, it's hidden in there. It's getting a root. Pretty soon it grows into a big tree. Pretty soon it manifests. There's a point where Jesus is hungry and there's a tree that is like not producing something good, so he kills the tree. What a goofy story. You look at that and say, he's Jesus. Why didn't he just say, boom, be heavily laden with figs? I mean, think about it and think about that story for a second. And if you're not familiar with it, I'll just let you know. In a nutshell, Jesus is walking along. He's hungry. He sees a fig tree that doesn't produce good fruit. And so angrily, he curses it and kills the tree. What kind of a Jesus thing is that? If you had the power to kill that tree and you were hungry? Yeah, the story really doesn't work. Why didn't Jesus heal the tree? He did. If, like everything else we're looking at here, the tree, the bad fruits, the not producing, so he gets rid of it. If it's metaphoric for getting rid of the things inside of you that either produce bad fruit or that are a waste of time and don't produce anything, boy, that sounds like a good way to live life. That sounds like a lesson that is usable. It makes a lot more sense than Jesus just using his powers to kill a fig tree that didn't produce a fig. This is really, to me, kind of a classic example of the story where it exists. And if you read it outwardly, physically, if you look at it as it just happened and it's literal, you can worship it. You can praise Jesus for his power. You can do things like that. You can have faith. But the story isn't really usable other than to allow you to have some sense of wonder about something that was written. If, however, you go through that doorway, take the verse with you and say, wait a minute, it's about the fruits that are growing in my garden and I'm producing something that is not okay, or I'm not producing something. That's where the story to me comes alive. That's where it becomes a living verse, because now it is a part of who and what I am, as opposed to just something that I can look at out there someplace and go, oh, I worship that. Okay, we need to weed our gardens, defeat our enemies. And we do that by becoming friends with them. You can't change what happened in your past. It's there. You got to change your perception of it. And that's hard. That is the difficult part right there. How do you do that? We know things today that they didn't know. I think they struggled probably more than we would have to. We know and we can understand that there's this idea that there was a perception. Somebody hurt you somehow, or you hurt somebody or something. Think of your own experience. What is it for you? Look in your mind. What is in there? Your capacity to think and make decisions, your memories, and your emotional state. That's what we have to work with here. The emotions are what hurt or feel good. We know that. The feelings of hurt good or hurt bad come from the way that experience was and the way that we perceive it. So we know the way that our perception is the way that something is. You know, something can happen to you and you're very hurt by it. And then you change your mind and you're not hurt by it anymore. The brain is malleable. We're looking for a healing here. And you know what? I think that's what we're looking for. We're looking to change that brain state. And that brain state is something that is surrounded with our experiences that hurt us, not the ones that are okay. Remembering grandma's apple pie smell in the kitchen on a fall day is wonderful. All these wonderful, happy feelings, hold on to them. But there's a lot of hurt ones in there that mix with it, and we become two. We become two people as we are holding on to our good stuff and we're hiding away our bad stuff. And I think that this is a message for just going after and making friends with that bad stuff, because that is how it ceases to be your enemy. When somebody has hurt you and you forgive them, then that is not your enemy. You no longer feel that. You no longer experience that. Your life no longer surrounds that. Your outer world changes as a result of that inner part. Jesus would tell us that our Father who sees our heart in secret will reward us in secret based on our heart. Our life unfolds for us based on what we hold inside of us, whether it's your Father giving it to you or not. It happens that way. You can see that. You can be a Christian and still be okay with this teaching. Is this how God keeps track of things? He doesn't have to watch you. It just senses your inner vibes. Want to get a grip on this? Your sins are not about what you did. Your sins are what you carry. At various times in the Bible, they're referred to as sins, oughts, transgressions, trespasses, things that are internal conflict. Let's call it that way. And you're looking for forgiveness. What that takes to get rid of all of that inner conflict. And you know what it is by looking at it. You know what it is inside of you that you're not going to let anybody know about. That's it right there. But only you can see it, and only you can do it, and only you can act upon it. And that's not true that only you can see it, because it will act out and people can see it in you and say, "Ooh, they got a problem. They need to weed their garden." So it acts out. We're known by our fruits. People see you and they know what your problem is by what you angrily express. That comes from a place inside of you. So yeah, we're known by our fruits. You need to clean the inside of your cup. Jesus really kind of hammers this, actually. If you read him looking inward like this, suddenly this complex, outward-looking, fly all over the place, supernatural, faith-based, whatever you want it to be, narrows down to a very specific couple of things to do to let go, to find peace, to find inner peace. And that's what these other verses are about coming up. It's magical and it's actually simple that way once you kind of turn it in. Otherwise, you're just going to do outward looking things to make it work. And you know what? That can work. Let me describe this kind of process. It's almost like, I don't know, an energy donut. I don't know how to describe it. Let's say you're hurt. You've got something inside of you that is painful because something happened to you in your past and you haven't forgiven. You got really hurt and it continues to hurt you in your life. And you've learned that you're supposed to forgive that person. And so you keep trying and you try and you say, I know I'm supposed to. I know it'll help me. And you do and you do and you do over and over again. But you keep realizing, it's lessening a little bit gradually, but I haven't really, I'm not as, I don't hate him as much as I used to, but I still kind of don't like him. It's a real gradual process. You've got a brain state that's changing. You've got an electrochemical storage up here that is changing. The more you work on forgiving as the forgiveness happens, this is the mechanism that is making the physical change. When you have done the complete forgiveness, what you realize is that the reason it works, if it has worked, is because you've changed your brain state, which then changes your physical life, which changes the conflict that you have inside of you, which changes your outer life. That is how it works. However, if you go, oh, I see how this is a circular step and that the real thing that's happening is the brain, the electrochemical state is changing because of something that I used to be ashamed of is something that I am no longer ashamed of. All I had to do was change that right there, which caused the brain state to change, which made my life change. You can do it faster. To me, when I kind of thought about that years ago, I thought, oh, this is wonderful. It gives me a way to go after this, and it gives me a reason to understand that I am angry, I'm depressed, I am feeling a lot of bad ways due to the inner conflict inside of me. I'm really struggling trying to live one kind of life, but things are not okay. I'm this mixed bag. Life isn't working. Not until I realize, boy, this stuff I'm carrying with me, I have to somehow set it down. Do all these metaphors start coming about, and you realize what they're trying to teach here as far as looking for purity is. What happens gradually, though, as you're working on these things is that brain state does change, which changes the way that, I don't know how all the body works, but the way the chemicals work in the body, the dopamine and all of the other things that are going on. Basically, I don't care about that. What I know is that if I don't feel good, if I'm feeling depressed or hurt and all of those kind of ways that you would just, oh my God, I feel horrible. Times you go cry by yourself or consider suicide or doing things like that where or you're lashing out or you're angry or you're just sitting in a corner somewhere going, I don't know what to do. It's because of that conflict. And you can get rid of that conflict by resolving the way you feel about those situations. And that's the only way to do it. Honestly, that's it. Unless you can somehow get a spiritual lobotomy, you have to let that stuff go. That is what forgiving your enemies is. You'll notice that I don't know how to separate my story from this teaching as I go along. Somebody could teach this in my place and have it done in 20 minutes, huh? But I somehow think that saying what I believe is one thing, but saying, here is what I believe. This is why I believe it. This is what I did. This was scary, and I think that you need to know it was scary, and I did it, but it was worth it. It made it okay in the end. That's what I want you to know. It's a lot easier to follow a path when you can see that somebody did it. I can never emphasize enough. Only you can take your path. You see that, right? It's in your head. It's your experiences. It's your emotions. Any outward path is a faith-based, whoa, yay, just wait. Is it fixed or are you dragging it with you? You make that choice for yourself. I tried very hard to feel good. I tried very hard to outwardly show it, but you know what? The one who made the outside of the cup also made the inside of the cup. That's me. And ultimately for me, I found it very helpful to realize that there was at least a perceivable reason for this to happen this way, that there was a brain state, that it had to do with experiences, that it was stored that way, that it was fears, that there were things that could be managed in my mind that would create a resolve. I didn't have to look out and continue thinking, how are these deities out there functioning capriciously on my behalf, deciding whether or not they're going to work in my behalf or not? How do I get their attention? Didn't have to do that anymore. It wasn't very effective. This, what I'm talking about, yeah, this is effective. What is it? Tell me what you think this is. What does it look like? Like going to see your shrink until you have nothing left inside of you that's bothersome. Blessed are the poor in spirit, empty, devoid of. Once you realize that the forgiveness is a very important factor up in here, that what is happening that changes your life is happening up here and not out there, you can go, oh, boom, jump right on it. And it just makes it easier to face it too. You realize it's not about the other person, it's about you. I got a video on forgiveness. Anyway, yeah, fun stuff. Okay, moving on. Okay, I'm going to combine these next three together. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you, and if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. They go with the first verse about loving your enemy and doing good to those who hate you, and then it moves on a little bit more to turn the other cheek. In the physical world, we're looking at things, again, that are not reasonable to do. So everybody should have the idea right now that the literal look is not what we're after. That if you read it on the surface layer and look at it in that outward looking, you have to proceed with faith. You have to come up with ideas and say, that sounds reasonable. I'm going to go with that. And somebody else might disagree and have something different that sounds reasonable to them. We get variations when you're looking outward. Once you look inward and you don't have to use faith anymore, you can use experiential knowledge. You can say, oh, I see something here, and if I do this right here, this happens. There's an actual process that you can see for yourself that makes it viable without having to have faith. It'll change your life. The only faith you need is to start going, okay, I think I see why that needs to happen. You have to have faith in that. And that's difficult, I know, because we come with a lot of hurt and a lot of pain and a lot of shame, and we're told to shut up, keep it inside, be tough. Keep it in there, handle it, manage it. And you know who tells you that? Everybody who can't deal with their stuff. We got a world full of it. People that have dealt with it will say, ooh, don't hide it away. Don't live with it. Don't tough it out. Because as you should know by now, they act out without your permission, and they hurt you, and they hurt the people around you. It hurts your life. The monsters inside of you that you're carrying to be strong, when they act out, they're taking control from you because you haven't taken control of them. They will act out as your enemy until you find a way to befriend them. Those monsters were not your demons to begin with. They were somebody else's. They gave them to you. And in not understanding them, you put them away. They grow. They become just the next generation. It's like they're reproducing until we stop and realize that is what's going on. That we are carrying what we need to get rid of to change our life. And that breaks the chain. One thing that helps you forgive is to realize that the person that gave it to you, they didn't know that. And the person that gave it to them, they didn't know it. Somewhere along the line, there's a chain of people that are just getting hurt one after another. You're the one that gets to figure it out. You're the one that gets to step out of that chain. You get to be the link that takes it somewhere else, breaks it free from your family of hurt. And that's kind of how it works. It is a painful trip. You have to face what you don't want to face. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. So understand that as you're moving along and you go, oh my gosh, this is painful and it hurts and things are crashing apart. That's okay. It says so right here in these verses. When things around you are not working out right, you're on course. Yeah, that's okay. You're good. Okay, I really wanted to hammer that forgive your enemies home, and I went back and did it a couple of times, and I messed up, and it's hacked, and I'm struggling. If you made it this far, thank you for making it through that last really chopped up section. All the pieces and parts are there, all the things I want to say, it just didn't come out very smoothly. My mom just died. And ultimately, there's parts of my life that are like coming full circle right now. But I have not done well getting this out. And you know what? The important thing is that the information is there. I'm not trying to sell anything here. If you're looking for this, you don't care. You're just going to go through it anyway because you're going to be like, God, I want this knowledge. And if you don't, you clicked off after 2 minutes, so that's okay. I think right now would probably be a good time for me to provide a very personal, albeit anecdotal story about that situation because it fits right here with the forgiveness, forgiving your enemies. So the videos all along the way talk about my life with my mom and growing up and the abuse and all the different things. But one of the ways I was able to forgive my mom was understanding that she came from the same place and she could never figure it out. I was very angry growing up. I hated her. I hated everything that I thought she had kids just to beat them. I'm not going to go into all of that in this video. You can go back and watch earlier ones if this is something that's meaningful to you in your life, if this story is helpful. If not, that's okay. So at some point in time in life, I realize I have to forgive my mom because I have become her. In some ways. Not completely. We all modify. But I find out later in life that and pinning my mom down as I'm an adult and saying, you know what, I'm done. You are going to talk to me. My life was so in shambles. And she did. She opened up. And she told me a life as a child of abuse, getting whipped repeatedly, being taken to the woodshed, clothes taken off, whipped, molested, again and again. And again, and being told, shut up, you tell anybody. My mom never figured out that was her enemy. We grew up and we all left home and she just doted all over my dad. They were very simple people living in the country. And, Dad was older, and when he passed away, she quit life. She quit. She had nothing. I didn't realize that was all she lived for, was taking care of him. She had so many walls up to who and what she was. She couldn't face anything. She had become such a shell of a person, and so how you talk to her, it was like talking to it. She didn't know anything. She couldn't talk. She couldn't figure anything out. She had mentally so shut down and had so big a walls up. She couldn't be her full self, and she died that way, never figuring it out. But she gave me life and she gave me these tools somehow. And I love her. And I wish she could have figured it out. I wish she could have healed. The rest of it, what do we have going on here as we move along? We have, after forgiving your enemies, you're turning the other cheek. This is a forgiveness thing. You're letting people off the hook. You're not holding grudges. You're not physically saying, go ahead, slap the other one. You're saying, I'm going to let you off the hook. I'm not going to live my life hating you. You might never even see you again. Let the stuff go. Same with possessions. Same with your garment. Same with life. You don't hold on to things so much that they become what you're here for. Your stuff, your physical things. What does Jesus tell you? What are you taking with you when you die? What is permanent? And always along the way, and I want to get to a point where I have to stop kind of caveating this, but it's not literal. You're not literally giving up your clothing until you are naked in order to be okay. This is really a bigger lesson about a bigger scope of life, of existence, of not being attached, of not being so connected to things that those things in the physical life become your primary means of life. You lose the joy, the love, the connection that you get from a real heartfelt spiritual connection with other human beings that, well, you know what that's like. And you know what it's like to be around people that aren't that way. The things that we want here are where moth and dust corrupt, right? This is Jesus still teaching the same things. And it's a very Buddhist thing. It's letting go. However, what we've learned today and by brain state and people holding on to things, it doesn't mean that people can't have things. It means the way that they have a mental relationship with them. If you have stuff and you don't care that you have that stuff, it's just there. That's one kind of a relationship. If you have that stuff and you guard that stuff and you watch that stuff and you you make sure nobody touches that stuff, you're kind of obsessed by that stuff. It's a different relationship with your stuff, or desires or wanting things that you don't have. It's okay to achieve those things, to strive for things that you want. But the way that you emotionally feel about it along the way is what creates you and is what serves you. You know, there's a couple of extremes, but there are people who are happy all the time and they get what they want sometimes, not always, but they're always happy. There's other people that aren't happy unless they're striving or getting something. And if they get something, they're still not happy. It's like, oh, there's something else again. There's a difference between requiring life outside of you to be what it is that fulfills you, or whether you are internally fulfilled and then your life unfolds in that way. So it's okay to have things. This isn't about being poor or destitute. This is just about having a mind that is free to live life, free to be happy, free to experience things on their terms. We know that one, right? Judge not. But we think that means judging somebody else, when in all reality, it means that, but it means more. It means judging anything. Lao Tzu teaches us that as soon as you see something and you decide that it's beautiful, you create what is ugly. Don't judge. That is mental freedom. We need to make sure that when we say and do these things, we're talking about the spiritual path. There are times where you have to judge and do things in society with people who really don't get on board with this and that are hateful and hurtful to others. You know, you might have to judge that. Okay, let's move on to the next verse in that section, number 31. It says, "Do to others as you would have them do to you." Okay, this verse sounds good on its own, but we can add it to other verses. We have other work from Jesus, and this fits actually in a greater body of work. It's not the greatest as a standalone verse. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Pretty simple. Yeah, is that a spiritual teaching? Hard to say. If you're mean to somebody, they're going to be mean back to you. If you're nice to somebody, they may or may not be nice back to you. They might be in a bad mood and they don't appreciate what you're doing. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Again, like everything that Jesus says. So let's take a look at it and see it at a deeper level. There's something else that Jesus says that sounds a lot like this that doesn't appear here, but we all know what it is. The measure you mete unto others will be likewise meted unto you. So that kind of is saying, not only like in this verse, go ahead and do to them what you want them to do back, but then the second one says, it doesn't even matter. Whatever you do to them is going to happen back to you anyway. So you look at that and go, well, how does that work? Spiritual world. I'm just going to go straight there. We have electrochemical brains. And in those electrochemical brains, we have memories and emotional storage. Love, joy, peace, shame, hate. Each of those emotions matches with emotions in the world. It looks for those things. So, you want to get rid of the stuff that isn't good. But at the same time, you realize that as you are becoming pure, as you are becoming love, as you are becoming joy, as you are getting rid of the hatred, the judgment, the pain, and the shame, you are becoming more of a pure person, and more things are going to happen for you that are along the lines of what you are becoming. That's the more realistic way that this works, and this is the way that over time, pretty much any tradition has said, yeah, this is actually how it really comes about. This is how it could be said that your Father, who sees your requests, your prayers in private, rewards you in private, or the cosmos responds to who and what you are. It all works. Do whatever you want. This right here is just letting you know not only that you need to be good, but there's actually more to it than that. So it's a bigger teaching than simply this right here. There's a point where Jesus in other teachings also alludes to the idea that it's enough to have it in your mind to have sinned as opposed to have acted it out. Why would that be? We look in society, and if somebody lives their life wanting to murder somebody, but they never do it, they're good to go. You've rendered unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. But that person who has that desire is nevertheless creating that at an energy level. I don't know how to describe that. The terms like that have been abused. It's all oogity boogity. There's a point though where the reality of it is that is a creation. That thought goes out. That is a manifested seed that goes into the world. And maybe it doesn't manifest, but it's nevertheless somehow planted at the energy level. And it allows this person to become kind of a conduit, perhaps. I don't like the way any of that sounds, honestly. But if you can understand what I'm talking about, that if you have all of these, I don't know what you call them, ugly, creepy feelings about people, but you never act upon them, what kind of a life is that? What are you living your life experiencing? It's not just important to not physically conduct oneself right. It's not enough to wash the outside of the cup. It's a karma thing, isn't it? It's really how the balance of things are. How does karma work? Is there something out there waiting with your number on it? Or do you just carry it inside of you? Bad things happen to you because you got a bad part of you that you don't want to deal with. Maybe you like it, maybe you hate it, but it's still what is going to happen. We can see that work. It's up to you to decide whether or not you want to rectify that. Okay, let's move ahead. I'm going to read the next 5 verses together here, starting with number 32. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies. Do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Okay, before I read these, I explained them. This is how it works, and they're telling us right here in this set right here. There's nothing special about you if you're just one group that is happy in your group hating other groups, who hates other groups, who hates other groups. You're just like them. Anyone who rises above that finds themselves in an unusual situation. You start out in life, when you think about it, you're a little kid in some grade school someplace, and rah, you go to school, not much to it, but you get into junior high, you get into high school, maybe now you've got some team spirit, some pride. You're starting to develop this kind of sense of belonging in groups, and we structure that way. Then as life goes on, you tell people what school you're from, then you tell what college you're from, then you tell what state you're from. And at some point you're like, rah, rah, you're waving your country's flag. And that's it. There's a world is the next step where the competition suddenly stops and the me against you isn't there anymore. And if we are in groups, in our religious groups, in our local groups, in whatever group it is, saying, yeah, we're better than them, we're right, they're wrong, then we're the same as them. And that's what we're being told right here. You got to rise above that. We have to be bigger than our religions, bigger than our countries. We're a global humanity. We got to be that big. Okay, so in this way, it's telling us as far as ourselves, we need to be bigger than anybody or anything else out there. We need to be very encompassing. And if you belong in any one of those groups and you think that you're right, you're wrong. And that's what is being implied here. It then moves on and talks about a number of other things as far as lending, not expecting it back, things of that nature. And this goes back to in that energy world where if we are doing things with expectations, if we're giving something and we want something back, that loop is kind of closed on a cosmic scale. Whether God is doing that at the moment or it was set up or whether it's the cosmos or whatever, I don't know. But what we can observe happening is that if we function and we're doing things and we're helping people with expectations, that kind of closes a cosmic loop. When you send something out that's good and something else comes back later, if you're standing right there saying, I'm going to send out something good, I want something back right now, boom, it's done. This is telling you, hey, just do good things randomly. That's a part of it. Don't have any expectations back. You'll get stuff back when you need it, when it's appropriate. You'll probably be surprised. So just give and just help without expectation. And yeah, the idea then that your Father which sees your heart in private will reward you in private. Why is it private? It's private to the world. But it's really a reflection of your soul. But we've discussed that and the brain and the memories and the forgiveness. So that's where this goes for me. It is not supernatural, you see that. But there is a natural energy makeup and cosmos that makes it work for any of those religions, any of those beliefs, if they employ the right brain practices, the right faith, the right convictions, the right love and joy. They all teach forgiveness, and we can kind of see how that is an incredibly critical part of this process, and a part of the process that might be the most difficult one. Yeah, it'll work for them. It'll work for everybody because of those things. But that it's not just about forgiveness, and it's not just about getting rid of the pain from our past, the shame, hurt, anger, hatred. But it's also getting rid of desires, longing, things that can never be fulfilled. It's looking for a way to be happy, to live now, to seek the kingdom of heaven within. It is not supernatural. It is not Christian. I don't want to know what Christians tell me they believe. I want to know what Jesus teaches. So we see as we look at these verses in here, they're a spiritual process. I'm going to end this video here. It's almost an hour long. I kind of rambled on a bit. I lost it in this video, and this is actually the second time I started it. I deleted everything the first time, and I had hours into it. It was so messed up. I was feeling pretty bad about it, and I'm not very good at. I don't feel great about this one either. But I think that the information is there, and I'll just move on. I'll finish up probably, I would imagine, on the next video. Then we'll discuss whether or not Jesus taught Buddhism. You seeing what's going on here? Looking forward to talking about it. All right, everybody love each other. Talk to you later.